Remember, you are stronger than you think. Don't believe me? We're about to prove it. Welcome back. This is Jen Lee, creator and host of I Need Blue podcast, True Crime to True Life. As a survivor of armed robbery and abduction, I understand the trauma and triggers survivors experience. Knowing this, and through my powerful podcast, I offer survivors a safe place to share their lived experiences. Survivors need blue to feel they belong, they are loved, understood, and my favorite, empowered. Please note, I Need Blue does contain sensitive topics which could be triggering. Please seek help if needed, and remember, you always come first. I Need Blue episodes can be found on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and many listening platforms, including my website, www.ineedblue.net. There, you will find all the episodes, valuable resources, safety tips, my newly released book and ebook, Why I Survived by Jennifer Lee. And if your passion is to learn to podcast, you will find a Learn to Podcast PDF available as well. I would like to thank Shar Good, the talented violinist who composed and performed this opening music. You can find information about Shar Good on my website. As always, thank you for listening. Let's begin today's episode. My guest today is Christine B. She heard me share my story of survival at a local ABWA meeting. During my presentation, she needed to leave the room. She felt triggered from her own traumas. Now, months later, she reached out to me and said she now has the courage to share her story with me and the listeners of I Need Blue. Like many of us, her trauma started in her younger years and seemed to accumulate during different life experiences. She navigated the emotional devastations on her own, her family living by the standards of, we don't talk about it, it never happened, and never show emotion. Christine is a professional recording artist, producer, and actress. She is here to share her journey, which includes sexual assault, domestic violence, social media bullying, and losing a baby. Christine, welcome to the I Need Blue podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. But really, the question is, how are you? Because I've had a chance to hear your story, most of it anyway. And what I appreciate about you is, I think sometimes people think trauma, the effects of it, you can just turn them on and off like a light switch, right? And it doesn't work that way. Even today, like me, you still deal with triggers from things that happened years ago. And for you, one particular instance that haunts you occurred in high school. Are you comfortable sharing that with us today?
In high school, I was a victim of an assault that took place at a party that was off campus. A lot of the popular kids were there, and it was a pretty large party. You know, I was going into a bathroom, and somebody else barged in who happened to be on one of the sports team that represented our school, and closed the door behind himself. And I was like, "What are you doing?" You know, and he was just like, "What are you doing?" I'm just like, "Could you please leave?" I was just in shock. I've never had to deal with something like that. And he just kept coming towards me. And then I heard knocks on the door. A couple more, I want to say, high school athletes came in. There were two more of them. And then they shut the door. And then they just kept like taunting me, saying like, I always wanted to know like what it would feel like to be with a Black girl, you know, things like that. And I was just like, you guys, you're in the same class as my brother. You know us. Like, what are you doing? Like, stop. And they wouldn't stop. I'm just going to leave it there. and just say that it was just really, really horrible. It was a really horrible time in my life. There was no help. I tried to talk about it. I tried to communicate with folks that I thought would understand me. I went through some of the appropriate channels, and no one listened. Nobody even cared. Nobody wanted to believe, like, oh, how could no, we just don't talk about things. No, that never happened. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, it was just something that I had to deal with on my own. From there, I just went from being a semi-popular high school student, being involved in a lot of musical activities, and then just around my junior year, I just lost it emotionally.
How old were you when the assault occurred?
I was 16 years old.
Yeah. We kind of prefaced it in the introduction when you said you didn't have anybody to listen, and that included your parents. How did that affect you?
I became isolated from everyone because that's what I know how to do, even to this day. And it's not that I want to be antisocial, it's just because in my mind, I'm just better off being by myself. Honestly, that's how I work best, to tell you the truth. I remember putting my Walkman headphones on and just turning up the volume, listening to tunes, learning new songs. And that's how I coped with it. My behaviors didn't match my parents and what they wanted me to do. So we obviously had a lot of issues. And I guess they wanted me to be like a certain type of person, but I just wasn't that girl. At the end of the day, I'm an artist.
Can we share that you are adopted?
Yeah, I'm adopted. And I was raised by a house of Germans. And they're very strict. And although I love my parents very much who adopted me, and I'm grateful for that, I truly am, I don't really blame them for not being there because I just didn't know how. These things were not heard of back in the day. Like, nobody wanted to hear about how the local star athletes were doing these kind of behaviors. So what do? You just sit with it. But it was definitely something that was so traumatic for me. It caused a lot of problems with my behaviors, according to my parents. And I actually had to leave their home. They put me out of their home for a good month. Then I came back, and after that, like, my grades started slipping in high school. I just started, becoming just more and more into a dark place. And I can remember that some of my attackers would see me in the hallway, and I was frightened, I would be going into a classroom, and then one of them would be coming out, and they would just like give me that look as if to say, you better shut up, and not say anything, and then take the door and slam it back on me. These things are like really happening, and nobody was paying attention to any of that. My parents were like really well known in that town. My parents owned a clothing store that was like really popular. It was just so messed up. I ended up leaving high school. As soon as I turned 18, that was it for me. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. And that was like kind of like the beginning of not a great time of a relationship between my parents and I. I was supposed to go off to, Berkeley College and play my flute, be a music producer, be a singer. That didn't happen. And I took an opposite route. I left high school, lived on my own, and was working during the day and was doing music at night. And that's how it all happens. And it just was not anything that my parents had planned for me. So we just stopped talking. So by the time I was 19, I just decided to be self-made.
Basically take your well-being into your hands. Did you have a friend you could talk to in high school?
I did. I had a best friend named Rhonda. She saw a lot of what was happening. But again, when you are going through so much, you kind of don't want to burden other people with the things that you're going through, and you don't want people to know. In a way, I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed for the fact that something like that had happened to me, and I was embarrassed for the fact that I never got the help that I needed. I was kind of like a sitting duck. Music was my only escape. It was my only route. It was my everything. To this day, I still deal with trauma, and I'm in my 50s. It's just things that you just never fully recover from. For instance, because of what happened to me in high school, I can't have white shower curtains. They either had to be clear or they had to be a different color. I just can't, because every time I see one, it just takes me back. It's a trigger for me because I was just grasping on to a shower curtain for dear life. When you have like 3 different people groping at you, attacking you, one person saying like, biting on your neck and saying like, hey, I always wanted to know what it was like to be with a black girl, drunk. It's just, those are things that I'll never forget. And dealing with racial trauma most of my life growing up, it's hard because I'm a mixed woman. I'm half black and I'm half Swedish. I feel like sometimes I want to say to people like, pick a race, because I get hated on by Caucasian folks and I get hated on by black folks. So I feel sometimes I just don't fit in. So that's another reason why I kind of isolate myself. Dealing with trauma on top of that is just, it's even harder because I grew up in a predominantly Caucasian town. So being one of the very few black girls, that is why that statement was said to me. And I'll never forget that as I was clenching onto a white shower curtain.
Yeah. As an adult, how do you rise above that? When you are being targeted on social media, we see it so much all the time, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is. How do you rise above that, especially in your career?
Well, at first, I'll be completely transparent with everyone and say that it used to really bother me. And sometimes it still gets to me, but not as much, you know what I mean? Because I'm a lot older now. So there was a lot of time that I went through a really bad depression where I was just like, I just want to give up. I just want to quit. What am I even doing this for? But then I think about, I got to leave a legacy, some kind of something behind, right? So I think about my daughter, obviously. I'm not going to be like, and just give up because that's just not me. I was never that type of person. There was a time where I literally spent months in my bedroom where I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't see anyone. I just stared at 4 walls, stared up at my ceiling fan. I kid you not. And you see a lot of people put positive quotes. There are people that are in my inner circle, and I'm so grateful and thankful for them, because if it wasn't for certain people, I would not be here today. That is the God's honest truth. I kid you not. And one of them is my daughter. She's like my lifeline because she's the one who saved my life. When I almost passed away, she saved my life, because if it wasn't for her making a 911 call and bringing the phone to me, I wouldn't be here.
Can you share the circumstances which led up to 911 having to be called, Christine?
I'm just now okay talking about it. I wasn't able to for the longest time. Within the past couple of years, I have placed his ashes where I needed to place them. And that gave me the strength to finally just talk about it, It was 1997 and I was pregnant, and 10 days before my due date, I just knew something wasn't right. And I don't know, I was already getting treated like not so great by, my doctor's office. I had one really, really good midwife who was always on my team. Unfortunately, she was not working the night that this happened. The midwife that was seeing me throughout my whole pregnancy, she was not working that night. It was January 18th, 1997, and something just wasn't right. I woke up in the middle of the night with these excruciating, I didn't even know who I was. It was that bad. It was just I was like, I couldn't talk. I couldn't breathe. The pain just wouldn't stop. There was no letting up on this pain. I felt like I was dying. I felt like this is it. Something is not right. I've had a baby before. I knew the pain. It was nowhere near a contraction or anything like that. This definitely something wrong. So I called in to the doctor's office, hoping to speak to somebody on call. And I was begging them, please let me come into the hospital. Something isn't right. My teeth are clattering. I feel so cold. My skin is clammy. I could barely talk. I was begging them. And they're like, well, Christine, you can't come into the hospital until you have contractions that are 5 minutes apart. And you have to have these contractions 5 minutes apart for 1 hour. I'm screaming. I'm like, these aren't contractions. They said, you need to calm down and don't be so dramatic. Yes, ma'am. That's what they said to me. They told me that I was being dramatic. I said, I'm not for nothing. I'm not being dramatic. And I was crying and I was just so upset.
Did you call 911 at that point? Get taken there?
No, I didn't know how to call 911 at that point because what was happening was my body was in shock and I didn't realize it. I just didn't know what to do. So they were telling me that I need to turn on the water in my bathroom and get into the tub and sit in the tub to turn my body temperature up. So I don't know how I did it. Got out of the bed, crawled to the bathroom because it was right next to my bedroom. And I said, Mercedes. And I don't know if she heard me because Mercedes' bedroom was on the other side of the bathroom. It was like a Jack and Jill kind of like thing. I put my hands on the sink and I was just like looking in the mirror. All I remember is that I woke up, I was on the floor again, and my daughter was standing over me and she was like shaking me, mommy, mommy. And so I was like, go grab the phone. So at this point, I did call 911. So she drags in the phone and, I said, I need an ambulance. And they gave them my address. The ambulance came. My daughter let them in the house because I told her that she needed to be a big girl and to do that inside the ambulance. And I'm crying and screaming the whole time. My daughter was upset too. This was trauma for her too. And the next thing I know is that I woke up and I was on a gurney. And I was like, I don't know what happened. And they were just like, now their whole mood had changed. And they said to me, we're very sorry, Christine, but it looks like your baby has died. And we need to rush you upstairs because that's all I heard. Next thing I know, I woke up. I don't know how much time had passed. And one of my best friends was there now, who I consider now my sister, and telling me, Chris, you need to push your baby out now. Like I was already like prepped and everything. They had my legs back. I didn't even know how I got into that position. And so I had to push out a stillborn baby that was 8 pounds and 2 ounces. And I do remember that. And it was horrible. And he wasn't crying. He was blue. And it was just, I just flipped out. There's a reason why my hair can't grow past a certain length. And why my hair is lopsided on one side because I pulled out a big clump of my hair on my right side. I learned after that the reason I was going through all this pain and everything and why I kept passing out and going through that because I was dying, and I did die. I died twice because I was hemorrhaging to death. That's what was happening to me.
And that's why when you said your daughter saved your life, because she went and got the phone for you and let the police officers in.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's okay. Take a minute.
Oh, so.
It's okay. Can I ask, how old is Mercedes?
She's 31 now. Mercedes is 31, and she owns her own business, and she also works full time.
And was the baby you lost a boy or a girl?
It was my son.
Your son.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a beautiful angel.
Yep, that's why I named him Noel. Noel DeVay. That was his name.
Beautiful.
It was just that trauma when you go through something like that. It's just, you never forget it. It doesn't matter that I'm older now and I can talk about it freely, and it's great that I can do that. But it's just, because of that medical trauma, because of the way that I was treated, there's just experiences that I'll just never forget. And because of that, I put on a lot of weight. People don't realize that trauma survivors, it affects your weight because either you lose weight or you gain weight. It is a physical aspect. And people really need to understand that and really need to read about that. I carry that burden. I carry that weight.
It's hard. I was very heavy at one point as well, so I understand that. I also know what it's like to be in a room of people and have stares, right? People looking at you, staring. when inside you really just want them to have some compassion and not judgment. I look around and I was like, what is their story? And I have compassion. And I think that is one of the greatest things we can learn from you, because I've seen you sitting in a room and I did not go up to you and say hello. I've watched you as you introduced yourself. I honestly am a little bit of an introvert, and it takes a lot of courage for me to go up to people. People, they're like, oh, that's not true. I was like, you have no idea what's going on inside me. You have no idea. Right. And you are just a beautiful reminder about compassion. We need to have compassion for others. It doesn't matter what they look like, what they wear, how much they weigh. None of that matters. Compassion, everyone deserves compassion.
That's true. Everybody does. I think the most positive thing that people need to understand is that people are always going to hate on you. You know, as soon as you're doing something really, really positive and good, and you're doing things for the community, there's always going to be somebody that is not satisfied with themselves. They're not at the level where you are, and they just want to, but instead of just joining you and saying, hey, I want to do that too, let me in, they take another path and they try to be self-destructive, not only to themselves, because it is self-destructive when you have hatred in your heart and you go out of your way to make a social media post and and say something that's kind of negative. You know, when you try to be self-destructive to somebody else, I mean, that's not a very nice feeling. So you just got to learn to just like flip it around and just know that those people, you don't need them in your life. It doesn't matter if you have one or two people in your life that you know are there for you, that you know that you can depend on 24/7. And there's a lot of people that say, I have no one I can talk to. Yes, you do. There are resources out there. It's just a matter of you wanting to find the will to get that help. You know, people ask me all the time, how did you do this and how did you get strong? The answer is staring at four walls, ceiling fan. I kid you not. That's my answer. And just training my mind and knowing that I will not tolerate anything less than being successful. I will not tolerate anybody just trying to take me down anymore. I will not tolerate anyone trying to say, you know, Christine B is this or Christine B is that. No, I'm at a point in my life right now. If you're not calling me to build me up, if you can't be bothered with me, then just stay out of my life. And I don't care anymore. If all I have is just myself, my daughter, a few people, it doesn't matter to me anymore, because I know what I'm doing comes from my heart, and I know my purpose, and I'm trying to do something that's good. And anybody else that's trying to, you know, say that I'm not, then that's your fault. That's your negativity, and you could stay there.
Absolutely. Christine, when did your musical entertainment career begin?
My musical career, I want to say, all started much earlier than my high school days. My parents discovered that I can sing at the age of 8. They bought me a lot of instruments as well. So I started to learn how to read music when I was about 9 years old. Did that by playing the flute. And the flute was just like so calming to me. So I continued to play the flute throughout middle school and high school. And I had a piccolo as well. And then I brought home a bunch of instruments, drove my mom and my dad crazy, of course, because they're just like, stop, you know.
Yeah. What is your favorite instrument?
God, there's so many. I don't play the flute anymore. I don't know. I just kind of like stopped playing, but I love the flute and I love keyboards and, of course, vocals. That's an instrument within itself. But in high school, I was in the marching band. I was in chorus. I started a bunch of rock bands, and we put together like different events. I was a member of the Future Business Leaders of America. They always hailed me to put together like variety shows and things like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I was doing, you know, back then.
How did your parents cultivate your music and encourage you to move forward with that?
Well, they were very, very supportive. They had me in dance lessons like when I was still in nursery school. It was funny. And I danced about, all the way up until I left home. That was one thing I did. I was in gymnastics. Encouraged me to take private lessons because I had a reading comprehension problem. So sometimes musical notes, when I would look on, sheet music, they would be kind of like all over the place. So I needed help. But with that help, it advanced me a little bit, and I was able to be first chair all-state band for like 4 years in a row, once in my middle school years and 3 years in high school. And that was a big achievement for me. They sent me away in the summer to summer camps. I guess I was just given a lot of opportunities. Then from there, on my own, when I went to college, I studied a lot in college, and I did a lot of vocal courses. And so it's like music has always been, a part of my life for sure.
You're very accomplished with your music in high school, and you're very humble. Kind of downplay it, but I think it's amazing what you accomplished.
Thank you.
Especially what you accomplished living through the assault and finding healthy therapy, if you will, through your music. I think that's great. Tell us a little bit more. Now you're out of high school, you're an adult. Tell me about relationships during that time.
Knowing that I kind of had a crazy past and everything, and I was living on my own. The first boyfriend that I had after I left my house, I thought he was fantastic, and oh my God, this is the love of my life. And of course, like I was 19, 20 years old, right? Dumb. No, he didn't have his stuff together, and was kind of a domestic abuser. Like I said, I was young, and I took him back, kept taking him back a few times, and then finally I was just like, okay, something's not right here. And finally everything clicked. And then I met my daughter's father. He was just like, why are you with that loser? I'll never forget that when he said that to me, because I was bartending, and that's why I met him. My daughter's father kept coming in and saying, I'm going to take you out to dinner. And I'm like, where? And he was like, I'm going to take you to Burger King. I'm like, Burger King? Are you serious? He was like, yeah, what's wrong with Burger King? So he kept coming in. So finally we went on the date and everything. And he's like, I don't understand why you're with that loser. Well, if you're with me, I'll never treat you like that. And you don't ever have to worry about that. And I have a big family, and you'd be a part of that family, blah, 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 blah. And so that's kind of like what attracted me to him. From there, I guess one thing led to another, and eventually him and I got together. Then, I'm pregnant, and then I had my daughter. But the relationship between my daughter's father and I wasn't the greatest. And I have to own some of that because we were both so young, and we would just get into these stupid little fights. But I didn't really realize who I was with. That's all I'm going to say. And one thing led to another. And the promise that he made me about me feeling secure and safe, and all those things kind of like went out the window, and it devastated me tremendously. I didn't feel safe, and I didn't feel secure. And I felt once again that I was alone without a family. Here I am, back to square one. It really sucked. I became a single mom and just started doing things on my own. I went back to school.
Going back to that first relationship, when did you recognize that it wasn't healthy? Because there are many people who are in relationships, and maybe their friends are telling them, what are you doing?
Well, it wasn't healthy when I got into a verbal altercation with him, and he ended up taking his arms and trying to strangle me, punching me in my face to the point where the right side of my face was all swollen up. I ran out of that house, and at the time I was living in Newport, like right around where the hospital was. I just ran. That's all I knew how to do was run. I ran. I had no shoes on my feet. In the late 80s, remember when those shiny spandex? I had shiny spandex, no shoes on, just a skimpy little t-shirt. And I ran, and I found a payphone, and I called my mom and dad, and I was like, please, I begged them to let me come home. It's like almost midnight, and I called them. I was like crying, and I was like begging them. I was like, please let me come home. This is what happened, blah, 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 blah. And they were like, no, you can't come home. I'm like, why? And they're like, well, you made your choice to leave our house. Yeah, I was 20 years old.
Wow. What did you do? Because again, you've gone to
I just went to the hospital. I went to the hospital, And I guess I was in really rough shape because all I remember is waking up, and I guess a lot of time had passed, and an advocate from a domestic violence shelter was there, sitting next to me, next to my hospital bed. Evidently, I had suffered a really bad concussion, and
Yeah.
I was really sick, and I was really hurt. I had to have a police escort go to the house where I was staying, where he was. I got my stuff out of there, and from there I went into a shelter. This is obviously before my daughter's father and I got together.
Yeah. How long were you in the shelter? And I'm so glad that was available to you and that you found it.
I was there for maybe about a month, and then I was able to find a place. People, they rent out rooms and stuff like that. So that's what I did. I was working in a restaurant, I was doing music, and I was working at a convenience store, and I was also a hairdresser. So I was doing a lot.
Do you think you kept yourself so busy in a way so you didn't have to feel the pain that you felt inside?
Part of that, true. But trust me, it's always at night. Sleeping has always been a difficult task for me. That's when I feel everything. Every time I just close my eyes, I sleep maybe like a few hours a night, and then I'm up and I just find things to do.
Right. So when you're laying there at night, is your mind just racing? And is it thoughts of what can I do to be successful next?
See, I have a whole routine. I have to make sure all my doors are locked and shut. I have to make sure my whole house is secure. I go through this whole thing, and I'm still not feeling 100%. Like, I have security cameras at my house, and sometimes they're very sensitive, right? And even if the wind blows the wrong way, they'll go off. And I'm like, I'm up. And it's just a sense of feeling secure, number one. And number two, it's just I go over the things that have happened to me in the past. And I think about, like, how would this person do this? And if I had that chance to face that person again, this is what I'd say to them. I go over things like that in my mind,
Yeah.
Realizing that I'll never get that opportunity. I don't want that opportunity because I don't want to see that person again. But it's still there. The trauma is still there, and I can't be enclosed. I like my house very open.
I know you said you don't want to see the person that hurt you. Sometimes they say, write a letter. Write a letter as though you are putting all of those feelings, whatever it is, do that. Sometimes that is part of a healing process as well. Have you ever done anything like that?
It's funny you say that because a lot of my music, they are the letters that you speak of. A lot of the lyrics. If people really listen closely to the lyrics, I'm actually telling the story. I'm retelling it.
And if you have even a little clip of a song so others can hear your beautiful voice, your talented voice, your beautiful message, I would love to include that.
About the situation
Amazing.
I have taken down a lot of my music off of Apple and Spotify and things like that just because I want to remaster some of my tracks. But I'm also coming out with some brand new music very, very soon. It's about the courage, getting enough strength to do it. And I find myself when I'm in the studio and I start recording and I start singing, and it's just a matter of making it through the song without having a breakdown, because it's just, these things are so personal, but my message is so clear. If that makes any sense. And I want people to hear it. I want people to know that these songs are recorded out of love, and they're just mementos of take this and know that, yeah, these things may have happened, but you're not alone. If Christine B can make it through this, then I can too. And this is how we're going to do it. I wrote songs about how to heal. Not everything is about me, because it's never about me. And that's one thing that, I've always been mindful of. I want to be able to give my listeners something. And that is a way to heal from trauma, of course. Okay, yeah, we've been through these things in this trauma, but how do we give back to our listeners and our music lovers and, let them know that, you can too heal from your past and your trauma and, still be able to love. And that's the biggest message, is that I think a lot of trauma survivors, they feel like, I can't do this. I don't know how to love anymore. I can't, no, I can't. I don't do relationships. And I used to be that person for a long time. You ask anybody who knows me, they'll tell you, oh, she's difficult. I don't do relationships. I mean, I didn't get married till I was like close to 15 years old. I just feel that everybody has something unique about themselves. We all just have to just stop and just think about how the other person would feel if we did A, B, and C. It's so hard sometimes when we're in a situation and emotions are heightened. Pull back, put a wall there before we speak sometimes, because we just never know what somebody is going through, honestly.
Healthy boundaries.
Yes.
Is basically your four walls, is protecting yourself and recognizing when you need to put up those boundaries, and also understanding that it's okay. But as we have compassion for other people, Christine, I think we also have to remember to have compassion for ourselves.
That makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Christine B.
Jen.
Thank you for being you.
No, thank you for being you.
Jen.
Yeah, it kind of rhymes.
Yeah, thank you for being you. And thank you for being my guest on I Need Blue podcast.
Thank you so very much for having me. I'm grateful and I'm very honored.
Thank you so much for listening today. This is Jen Lee with the I Need Blue podcast. To find all of my episodes, you can visit my website, www.ineedblue.net. You can also find me on all of your favorite podcast platforms. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of those favorite fun social media sites. And remember, you are stronger than you think.